Hey, welcome back everybody. This is Timeline 2 for What If Linda Was in Halo 3, Part 2. Before we get into the rest of the video, you're gonna see a lot of your own characters here. A couple of days I posted on the community tab asking for your made-up characters or your own names, and I hope you think I've done them justice with what I do here. This video will be a long one, but I did not want to end it too soon, and I didn't want to end it too late as to not have enough content for a full video on the third and final part of this series. If you enjoyed Timeline 2, let me know. Hit the like button, subscribe, do all them YouTube things. Without further ado, let's do a small recap of what's happened so far. Last time, the Master Chief, Linda, Arbiter, and Yipmoor faced several problems while on board a flood-controlled Ark. While on board the Ark, they found a Forerunner combat suit, but that was left behind with 343 Guilty Spark. They also got a Promethean suppressor and a light rifle. Yipmoor got himself a bolt shot as well. Ultimately, the only one who didn't get an upgrade was really the Arbiter. They encountered many flood lifeforms unseen to the galaxy for hundreds of thousands of years, and on Earth they fought flood bears, tigerfish, dolphins, and monkeys. 3 juggernauts to enter the Halo control room. They had a Halo run, and Chief was teleported to Forward Unto Dawn to save both the ship and the remaining crew, which was nothing more than Miranda and Johnson. Chief plugged in Cortana, and when the Forward Unto Dawn gets split in half, Miranda, Johnson, and Cortana are on the other side of the ship this time. So now that we are all caught up with the main points, let's begin. Mission 1. Arrival. We pick up where the last What If left off. Chief, Linda, Yipmoor, and the Arbiter have landed on a flood-infested Earth. The Arbiter tosses Master Chief an assault rifle, he reloads, the Arbiter prepares his carbine. Linda and Yipmoor prepare their light rifle and bolt shot as hordes of flood come in sprinting. Most of them are human combat forms, but there are also various animal forms among them. The objective of the mission starts as find a way to communicate with the UNSC. The entire planet is now hostile and they won't survive here alone. Chief and Linda recognize where they landed though. It's 10 kilometers away from the base where Crow's Nest was. The base may have been blown up, but there's a chance some equipment survived the explosion. In either case, they don't have many options. The fight to even get off the Forward Unto Dawn will be a nightmare in itself. They are numbered 100 to 1. No, 1,000 to 1. No, 100,000 to 1. But what's worse is the tactical differences in all the different flood types. While they're all experts at fighting combat human forms by now, every kind of animal on Earth and tank forms are possible. What's worse, any damage to Yipmoor's breathing apparatus, or any damage that would break the Arbiter's shields and leave them exposed to the atmosphere. Any piece of Mjolnir armor that gets pierced will mean death or infection. The entire ozone is layer upon layer of flood spores. After the initial wave of flood lifeforms, Chief finds his Promethean suppressor. They clear their way through the maintenance bay. They discover there's some intact vehicles though. Ideally, they would have gone to the hangar or garage to find a Warthog or a tank, but with how much flood there is around, the fight doesn't allow for time to search for a combat vehicle. So they have to take a regular troop transport one. Linda hops on the driver's seat. She uses her right hand to drive and her left to shoot out ahead of them. Yip is riding shotgun, shooting bolt shots out, clearing a path for the vehicle. Arbiter is running low on carbine ammo, which is when Chief gives him back the assault rifle the Arbiter gave him. The Chief is starting to run out of suppressor ammo as well though. They get on Savo Highway as it's the most direct route. It's basically the path of Mission 3 in Halo 3, but going backwards. Surely now the Flood knows where they are going. They aren't sure if there's a Gravemind or not since the Gravemind was on the Ark, but the Flood aren't completely dumb here, so something has to be guiding them. The rest of the mission is fighting off flood forms that jump on top of the vehicle. By the time they reach the tunnels of Crow's Nest, there's a family of flood rhinoceros waiting for them. The rhinos charge at the vehicle and crash right into it. Yipmoor goes flying through the window and right into the rhinos. Chief and Arbiter also go flying off, but they land more gracefully right into a fight though. Linda hops on the car after what can only be described as a mild concussion. When they're done with these flood, they go to check on Yipmoor and see he is using his claws to tear apart the flood rhino. They all assumed he was hurt, but the big boy himself was filled with rage and fueled by destruction. The mission ends as they close the gates and plan on scaling the inside of the broken elevator. Mission 2. There I'm back again. Linda and Chief are leading with their flashlights. The Arbiter is watching their backs as his assault rifle is carrying a flashlight. While Yipmoor doesn't have a direct way to get light, the bolt shot is glowing with an orange light of Promethean power. While in the underground cave system, they managed to stack up on ammo from the human weapons cache around. What's better though, Linda finally digs up her sniper she left in the rubble from last time they were here. What follows is akin to the library in Halo Combat Evolved. Everything is dark and flood infested. Not infested in the way Halo 3's Cortana mission is, but more so in the air and in the flood forms around every corner. Chief and the Arbiter climb up the elevator shaft that was exploded while Linda and Yip wait in the bottom. They start to talk.
Does the demon think we will find help here?
It's Linda.
Huh?
He's confused for a moment. If I'm a demon, then you're a grunt, she replies. Yip starts to get mad at being called a grunt again, until he now realizes what she means.
Oh, does Linda think we will find help here?
The odds are everyone evacuated beyond the moon.
So there's no help?
Linda walks over to some weapons on the floor and tosses Yip a shotgun. That's all the help we need. The chief kicks down 2 rocks as a signal that it's okay for them to come up. Yipmore can't climb though. The shotgun plus his physiology means he is struggling a lot. So Linda uses the elevator's rope to tie it around herself and Yip and start climbing, pulling him up. While on top, Chief and Arbiter are having to kill several small flood forms of converted biomass. Nothing too specific here, just pure forms ranging in size and deadliness. Once Linda is done hoisting Yip up the elevator, they begin to move throughout the base as a group through a dozen jump scares of flood forms and at least one of the fat carrier forms that explode at every single corner. They managed to find more weapons and equipment like a bubble shield, an upgraded armor lock, a deployable cover shield, and a flare on top of a corpse of a brute that was turned into flood. Armed with these equipments and plenty of ammo, they fight to what would have been the control room / psyop center. Seeing as the bomb took out everything here, they try one last measure, the air traffic control tower. They make their way with their only sources of light not being enough to penetrate the darkness. They're forced to use the flare, it's just too dark. They also end up having to use the deployable cover, but not for battle. Since the explosion caved in the path to the tower, the intention is to use the cover as a platform to jump on. Linda is confident she can make the jump. As a sniper that needs to get creative on where to take shots from, she has trained her jumps to be super high. Once she gets up here, she's able to contact the UNSC. Well, after several minutes of trying at least. But the sheer distance means they are waiting a while before they get any response. Linda's message is about how her, Master Chief, plus 2 more are on Earth and they need evac. Just about 8 minutes later, they get a response from an outpost on Mars. It seems that the fight had spread to other parts of the Sol system. They get word that none of the attempts to enter the planet's airspace have succeeded. The UNSC has refused the help from the elites. They didn't want to glass Earth. The argument got so heated they almost started a new war. But they're gonna try to make a small run for whatever operatives are left on Earth. There's too many anti-air defenses set up by the flood though, so they're gonna have to clear them out before they can be saved. The last thing they hear is that they're gonna be picked up at the core of New Mombasa's superintendent location in 5 days. It was the only place left on Earth that wasn't 100% flood apparently. Linda climbs back down and she tells the rest. As she's telling them, she mentions that if the AA defenses aren't dealt with, Chief, they won't make it. When Linda also mentions that they need to make it to New Mombasa in 5 days, as it's the only place the UNSC can even think about landing, Chief once again interrupts as he says,
Cortana.
Linda puts a hand on his shoulder. The scene fades to black. Mission 3, Old Mombasa. The mission picks up 4 days later. Linda is piloting a burning Pelican, and there's visible wear and tear on both her and Chief's armor. The Pelican crashes into a building, in the process popping a flood boil of biomass. They all emerge from the wreckage, visibly slower and worn out. They haven't had more than a few hours of sleep. Out of the last 100 hours, they've been awake almost 90 of them, only taking small breaks of sleep. Even though New Mombasa was not far, the flood had been getting smarter and more relentless every day, and it has taken them days just to travel such a short distance with constant flood attacks. They plan to still head into the tunnels underground and see if they can make it to the Cortana fragment. For the first 3 days of their travels, all they could do was focus on getting there, but by the 4th day, they were just barely entering the city. Luckily, Cortana's sub-protocols were still trying to defend New Mombasa. She may not have many defenses left, but with control of the city's infrastructure, she has helped the group as much as she can. The building they crashed into had a parking garage, so they keep heading toward the rally point /LC, right through the parking garage. They're only 25 miles, that's just over 40 kilometers away, from where they need to be. While they're moving through the parking garage, they notice Yipmore moving slower than all of them. Linda asks him why he's slowed down, and if he's hurt. He says no, but that he's making sure the flood doesn't sneak up on them. Linda tells him that they're on a 4th floor. Even if the combat forms jump up here, that will give them plenty of time and notice. When immediately she's proven wrong. A long mask comes at them with teeth. Linda instantly jams her knife into it and says, "Ah, that's a new one." What she thought was a tentacle is now roaring in pain, and it turns out to be a flood giraffe. Suddenly, 5 more come up attacking the group. Chief slices one with an energy sword. The head plops down and begins to reshape into a worm-like mass and slithers its way towards the Arbiter, but he stomps on it and burns it with a flamethrower. Sadly though, only a small flame comes out. As it sputters out, he tosses the flamethrower aside and brings out a gravity hammer stowed on his back. Chief stomps on the remains of the burnt worm creature and says,
We have to move.
As they all pick up the pace, they are traveling through a collapsing city. Buildings after building, parts of the whole floors are collapsing into each other. Every now and then a few traffic signals will still turn on, which is Cortana trying to lead them through the least flood infected areas. Least infected, that is. Because every street they turn is another nightmare. Every day they have noticed the planet is covered more and more with a layer of biomass even in the streets. Each step is a mush sound as their feet are sticking to the floor. After making it out of the parking garage though, they find themselves in the downtown streets of New Mombasa. They are getting closer, but not fast enough. They have just under 16 hours to make it to the superintendent location and take care of the anti-air guns. They had planned to each go to one, much in the same way they had tried to take out the spore dispersers in the previous video. But they were exhausted and surrounded. The best way to survive and try to make it in time would be to split up into 2 groups only. This time we only have one point of view. It's Linda and the Arbiter. She's carrying around a DMR and a plasma repeater and an empty light rifle. Chief and Linda decided to keep the weapon in case they made it back to the UNSC. Reverse engineering them would go a great way. Arbiter walks forward with his hammer in hand, kinda dragging it as he's exhausted from all these days without sleeping. He can barely carry it. If you play this mission as the Arbiter, the mission kinda plays out as if you were encumbered by weight in Skyrim. But at least you can choose if you wanna play as Linda. They have to climb up the skyscraper to get to the AA gun on top, and they make their way back down to do it again. For the first one though, the stairs are intact, so it's completely just a matter of fighting flood range forms on each staircase, shooting down at them and protecting themselves from being pierced. When they make it to the top of the building, they plan to go on the roof. The doors immediately burst open and a tank form charges at the pair. The Arbiter gets up on its face and slams the gravity hammer right into it, launching it 100 feet back and off the building. Linda quickly moves in to take out the combat forms, protecting the AA gun system. These were human anti-air defense. The next one would be a Covenant one, so they were saving a plasma grenade, their last plasma grenade. After the combat forms are taken care of, the Arbiter picks up 2 SMGs that are almost empty, but he can't really afford to be picky about ammo at the moment. In the distance, on top of another skyscraper, they see an explosion. That one was one of the other 2 that Chief and Yipmore had to take down. Linda and the Arbiter use a suspension cable installed on the building on the other side of the street to slide their way down. When they land, the roof caves in on itself and they end up dropping 2 floors extra. As they make their way out of the building, they fight through a few more combat forms, but this time there's even more flood animals. The problem here becomes being trapped in a building with animals that camouflage. The flood has improved certain animals' ability to blend in with their environments, especially with all the biomass around. You can't quite tell what's what. Several small animals, such as chameleons and frogs and toads, are all over the building and attached to biomass covered walls, so small hits come from any direction. Once they finally make it out of the building, Linda runs out of ammo and the Arbiter hands her one of the SMGs he is carrying. 1 magazine left each. Linda uses her DMR, however, to take care of the long range enemies. They need to conserve as much energy as possible and avoid up close fights. Once they get to the second building, they find a car. Of course they had found more over the last few days, but the terrain had been so full of flood or the car was no longer operable. Either way, they hadn't been able to use any of the other vehicles. But this one was in good condition and able to go through biomass to the terrain. The Arbiter chuckles to himself and they both think this would have been handy before now. They get inside the building and find that the stairs are almost all destroyed from structural damage. Linda says she noticed a platform on the outside that they can use. A window washing platform, that is. There's 2 problems though. First is getting up to the 12th floor to get on it. And second is if it can even hold their weight. They agree that one way or another they have to try, or else they'll have to level the entire building. And they don't have any explosives besides that 1 plasma grenade left. Well, the stairs aren't entirely gone, so they can get to the 12th floor carefully if they try to use the platform. After fighting some more flood inside the building, they go up the stairs, but there is less and less room to move around. Once they reach the 7th floor though, the floor beneath Linda starts to collapse. The weight of her armor is bringing down the floor and her with it. Under normal circumstances, she would have been able to move fast out of the way, but this time she has been so sleep deprived and hasn't eaten since back on the Ark, and she has been on full combat alert for days. She falls through the stairs back down to the 2nd floor. The Arbiter and her agree that he needs to keep moving upward, so he continues while she tries to find another way up. She goes outside the building to analyze the situation again, but a pack of floodhounds come after her. Now she's no Kelly, and she is tired, but she's still able to outrun them, just barely though. Linda runs into the building next to the skyscraper. The building still has power as the elevator doors open and she hears Cortana's voice over the speaker. speakers on the elevator.
Get in.
She runs in just as the hounds are about to catch up to her. The doors shut close. The elevator is heading to the top of the building. Cortana asks,
Are you okay?
and Linda replies, would be better without that damn music. The elevator's music volume lowers. Cortana simply says,
Sorry, can't turn it off.
Before Linda can reach the top floor though, flood forms start to land on top of the elevator and make it their way in through the maintenance shaft. There's very little time to prepare, so she takes these combat forms with her blades. Well, her blades at this point are just a kitchen knife. It's not the knife Spartans usually carry around, but over the last few days she had run through so many blades she couldn't even keep count anymore. After making it to the top, Cortana tells her that if she manages a short sprint of 45 kilometers per hour and takes the biggest jump of her life, she should be able to cross the gap between the two buildings and land on top of the window washing platform. Linda, exhausted, tells Cortana, 28 miles per hour, huh? That's nothing. She pauses for a second to catch her breath and steady her nerves. She tells Cortana thank you as she prepares to run. She goes to one end of the building before sprinting to the other side. And as she takes a massive jump, she sees another explosion from a second skyscraper Chief and Yipmore had gone to in the distance. While she's in midair, she thinks to herself, eat your heart out, Kelly, and lands on the platform just barely though, where Arbiter is already waiting for her. The sudden weight shift snaps the platform's cables, but only from one side. She starts to slide down when the Arbiter grabs onto the cables to hold them together. He is screaming and roaring from all the force he is exerting. Linda quickly gets up and runs to the other end of the platform to activate the controls to go up, then immediately turns back around and goes to help the Arbiter before he lets go of the cables. As they ride their way up, several flood flying forms begin to take shots at them. Linda is holding on to the cables while Arbiter uses her DMR to take care of them. This is kind of like a mini escort mission, defending Linda in the meantime while they make their way up. When they finally make it to the top of the building, they see their next problem has lined up for them. There's a juggernaut on the roof guarding the AA gun. They had gotten far more adept at killing Flood, but they simply did not think they had the resources left to kill the juggernaut and take the AA gun. Arbiter takes the hammer and gets ready to smack the charging juggernaut, but Linda instead rushes the juggernaut, avoiding every hit and hopping on top of it. She takes their last plasma grenade, the one they were saving, and uses the last few shots of her SMG to shoot a hole into the juggernaut's head. Seeing that the hole is not big enough, she punches right into it, activating the plasma grenade and leaving it inside the monstrosity's head. As she leaps backwards, it explodes. The Arbiter helps her up, but they realize now that they don't have anything to blow up the AA gun with. Linda resigns herself to and tells the Arbiter, my armor supply, it can take care of the entire building. The Arbiter has gotten somewhat close to her by now and says,
No, there must be another way, Spartan Linda.
They hear, yeah, there is. The voice sounds familiar, but for there to be humans left would be a miracle. Once they turn around to see a group of ODSTs with jetpacks. Rookie, Dutch, Buck, and Dare. On Rookie's shoulder, there's a rocket launcher. Buck taps him on the shoulder and says, blow her up, Rookie, as he launches a Spunkner shot at the exposed core of the AA gun. Dare says, come on, let's get you out of here. But Linda simply replies, the stairs are gone. Buck answers with, Dutch, double time, as he nods at Dutch to bring a jetpack to Linda. He starts to say, next time.
I'm keeping my boots on the ground.
Dutch interrupts him. Buck finishes, yeah, next time. This jetpack is covered fresh with blood. Linda hands it to the Arbiter and says, I can make a rough landing, as she taps on her armor. Dare stops her though and says, we're gonna need you at 100% to make it out of here. Veronica Dare turns around and says, alright boys, lift with your legs, as she spins her finger around. They all move in to surround the Arbiter and pretty much lift him up. The Arbiter is embarrassed, but he is way too tired to care. The group jumps off the building, activating their jetpacks. Upon landing, they see 3 more ODSCs waiting at the bottom of the building, with the floodhounds that chased Linda earlier dead at their feet. Linda tells them there's a car on the other side of the building that might come in handy. Dare gives the 3 other ODSTs orders to go get Chief and Yipmore. One of them hands the Arbiter a plasma rifle and Linda a brute shot. The Arbiter keeps the hammer stowed on his back, debating if it's worth keeping the weight, but decides it's best to have an ace up his sleeve. We'll have to walk a bit, but we have working monkeys 2 clicks out from here. The camera pans up, heading into the sky as we see Linda nod and the group begins to walk out of sight. Just then we also see the ODSTs drive the car to the left, heading the opposite way to go pick up Master Chief and Yipmore. We skip to the tunnels of New Mombasa, the network leading down to the superintendent, this time from Master Chief and Yipmore's point of view as they walk in with 3 ODSCs, the ones that came to get them in the car. They see another 3 ODSCs immediately run up to them. By them, I mean the ODSCs, not Chief and Yip. Chief can hear the ODSCs mad, saying, 10 of you went out there! Why are only 7 of you coming back? One of the ODSCs says, come on, Donnie, let it go. So what now? We risk our our lives for Spartans and their hingehead buddies? Private Winters tells him, you don't know shit, Donnie. Even the squid faces try to help us in DC. Private Winters, Captain Patrick Maloney, and Lieutenant BLT had dropped down on Washington, DC. It was a miracle they had made it halfway across the planet, but that spoke volumes of Maloney's piloting abilities. What the hell do you know about combat? You're a goddamn private. Buck walks up to him and hits him with a right hook square on the jaw. He says, they knew what they were doing signing up, and you did too. Now do your damn job. There's only two types of ODSTs who had made it here alive. The very best of the best and the cowards, who other brave hell jumpers gave their lives to save. Chief and Yip continue heading inside through the long hallway of many doors. Yipmore is chewing Chief's ears off because of how silent the Chief is. As they enter the room where the superintendent is housed, Chief sees Cortana. Well, her subroutine that split off anyway.
So you see, that's why only 4 Nipple brothers can be on one platoon, or there's...
Cortana!
Oh, I guess I'm talking to myself now.
Cortana looks at him with a sad expression as she looks down, almost ashamed. No, not really. Chief just says back to her,
You are to me.
Chief goes to unplug her and put her in his head. This is not the same AI chip. This one was the one the superintendent was in, except quick to adjust absorbed Virgil entirely, so the chip was basically empty. But she stops him and tells him not yet. She needs to watch the city. He may be almost entirely gone, but she still has a few eyes and ears out there. She pretty much tells Chief he needs to get some sleep. They only have 10 hours until the UNSC comes rescue them. An ODST yells out from the back, if they come! She can tell that the Chief got mad at that comment, mostly by the way he said it. Cortana just tells him not to worry, she'll keep an eye out. As he's heading to lay down, he sees Linda is already completely passed out with her helmet off. The air around was being kept clean by Cortana. The Arbiter is sleeping in the corner in a strange position, almost as if he was standing up. Upon seeing that, Chief goes to lay down next to Linda, but like in a sitting up kind of way, leaning against the wall. Chief says to Cortana,
Wake me when you need me.
Mission 4, Extraction. The mission starts with explosions ringing out from all over. The first thing we hear is Cortana saying, helmets, now! As we see Linda reach for her helmet, we see 6 ODSTs running out of the room and immediately start shooting upward with a combination of battle rifles and silenced SMGs. As she puts on her helmets, her eyes adjust to the HUD and she sees flood flying forms coming down and one of the ODSTs gets souped up. Chief is shooting dual-wielding Crimson Brute plasma rifles and drops one to catch the ODST that was being swept up. As he's holding him though, the person that once was inside the suit no longer exists. Now it's just John holding a shapeless mass. Chief slams it into the ground and stomps on it as he takes the would-be ODST's magnum and continues dual wielding, now with one magnum instead. The Arbiter is shooting up a beam rifle, and Yip, he is spamming plasma grenades up into the air. Well, he is spamming, but with skill. He's landing grenades on all sorts of flood life forms. Linda runs up to the podium where Cortana's hologram had been. There was no hologram this time as she had only been using it for their sake. She wanted to conserve as much energy as possible this time. Against the podium where Cortana is being held, there's an assault rifle with an extended barrel. She uses that instead of her sniper as she is almost out of ammo. Cortana says,
Me, inside your head, now.
As soon as Linda takes her into the helmet, she asks, how long? Too long. Cortana, how long? Marking a timer on your heads-up display now. Linda keeps shooting, but out of the corner of her eye, she can see the timer counting down. 7 minutes, 13 seconds. 7 minutes, 12 seconds. At this point, everyone is either shooting up at the flying forms or around them as they are being surrounded by hundreds of flood forms. Everything from the infection forms to tanks. Combat forms are leaping down and landing right next to them. Linda's prioritizing these as Chief and Yipmore start taking care of the bigger ones. This mission, gameplay-wise, feels a lot like Firefight, but we're not quite there. It's not waves, it's just a constant barrage and onslaught of flood. They seem to earn the name Flood, as it feels like they are drowning in biomass at this point. Lieutenant BLT throws a frag grenade directly inside one of the tank's mouths, and as it charges forward, it blows up. The blast sends her flying back into Linda's arms. Linda helps her up as they keep fighting the endless waves. Chief throws down his magnum as it runs empty, and he reaches down to find no more magazines. He yells out,
How much time was left?
Linda replies with, 4 minutes. Buck adds on to the conversation, 4 seconds is too long, as he pumps a shotgun shot directly into a stalker creeping up on Corporal Sorbell. The corporal gives a nod and puts a few more rounds into the stalker's still twitching body. At this point, they have run all out of ammo and are scurrying to grab the weapons off the combat forms. A pelican comes crashing down into the roof, as the original explosion had only taken out this hole where the brutes usually drop down with jetpacks. They had managed managed to plug it up, but with this pelican coming down, it's all over. That had been their only saving grace. That's why only a few flood forms had been dropping in. This is like tearing down the dam. The pelican goes flying past them and into the chasm and gets swept up by the river, at which point flood keeps pouring in. This distraction helps to break the spell of fighting on Captain Maloney, as he finally notices just how far he has strayed from the core of the group. Captain Maloney begins to run back to the Spartans as the fight has been moving around. Everyone had separated. From the hall above, they see several infection carrier forms wobble into the opening, so they all try to take cover. But while surrounded, there's nothing much that qualifies as cover. As the carrier forms land, they explode and launch nearby survivors, scattering them once again. 2 more ODSTs die here, as one was launched directly into a wall at 20 miles an hour. This one being the petulant Donald Stosh, Sergeant Gunner, aka the guy who kept talking crap about the Spartans when Chief had just arrived. The other was directly launched into a tank form that wraps itself around the ODST's body. It begins to absorb him into its own biomass. That same tank form runs up on Rookie so as to attempt a similar consumption, but Yipmore picks up a sword from a downed combat form and stabs it right into the tank. Although it felt awkward to his hand, he liked it. The Rookie nods and covers Yip's back as he tries to retrieve the sword from the flood form's abdomen. But as Yip crouches down, 2 hands reach out to him and start pulling him in. The ODST inside has become a combat form, thus turning this beast into a double-bodied horror. Veronica there kicks the hands of the flood form, allowing Yip to get free. He quickly picks up the sword back up and cuts the beast into pieces. Just then Linda yells out, 45 seconds! Just hold him off! Almost as if following her cue, juggernauts begin to rain down on them. One lands directly in front of Master Chief and knocks his weapon out of his hands. Chief crouches to dodge another blow from the creature. As he crouches, he reaches for a knife with one hand and a flame grenade with the other. In one swift movement, he comes back up. Chief slices a hole in the juggernaut's face and tosses the grenade at the exposed innards. He somersaults backwards as the juggernaut begins to uncontrollably flail its arms around. Meanwhile, the second juggernaut landed near Linda, and as it tries to reach out to her, Yipmore cuts one of its appendages off. Linda uses this as an opportunity to Spartan kick it. After receiving a Mjolnir boot to the gut, the creature stumbles back a few paces, at which point the Arbiter uses the gravity hammer he had been saving this whole time to smack the juggernaut 12 feet back into the air. But with this distraction, the third juggernaut charged at him. Lieutenant BLT tries to help him, but an infected popcorn little form jumps on her arm. She drops her weapon and begins stabbing it with her knife, but it won't let go. It's trying to make its way into her spine when Chief grabs it and squishes it with his bare hand and tosses it like a baseball. Lieutenant BLT checks to make sure her armor isn't compromised. As she checks her armor, Private Raymond Winters hands her a brute shot. Not the weapon she had dropped, but this is a better weapon nonetheless. Finally, they all look up as they begin to hear explosions above. There's a battle happening above them equally as fearsome. The elites and their ships had come to help the UNSC, but while the UNSC had planned to pick up the remaining survivors, the elites instead had come to glass the planet. But after weeks of getting prepared, the flood had repaired and set up plenty of defenses. Anything short of 100 ships would not be enough to overcome the flood now. They had all noticed the timer was past 0 at this point, but without any real options but to keep fighting, no one dared say a word. All their focus was on staying alive. The mission objectives now change to survive. Now at this point is when the mission turns into a firefight wave style of fighting. The flood have to split their forces on stopping the ground team and the extraction team. It allows Linda's group to breathe for only a few seconds at a time, but it's more than they had before. Morale was running low as the time had ran out, but Cortana assures them there is birds on their way. Horace is panting loudly, and when his silenced magnum runs completely empty out of ammo, he throws it at an incoming marine combat form. The flood form is momentarily stunned, only for a microsecond though, as if offended by the fact that the ODC would bother to throw his gun. This second is all Sobel needs as he lunges forward with all his might and cuts the flood form in half with a knife. Sobel drops to one knee, gasping for air, saying he's too old to keep up with this. Dutch turns to give him a hand, as he himself is feeling too old for this fight as well, but as he reaches down, he immediately pulls his hand back. We see Horace's cracked helmet. Spores have begun to spread into his suit. It's only a matter of seconds before he transforms into a flood puppet. Horace resigns himself to not turn into one of these abominations. He looks over to his right and reaches over for a pair of plasma grenades. He takes off his helmet and starts running at several stalkers as they are trying to reshape themselves into ranged forms. He activates the sticky grenades and explodes on top of them, chunks of mass flying all over. One large piece of Horace's torso flies straight into Veronica Dare, knocking her down. Buck comes running to help her while Linda and the Arbiter give them some cover by deploying the bubble shield they had found on Crow's Nest. They managed to carry it all the way until now only because of the Arbiter's wisdom. There have been several several times it could have come in handy, but finally the two Spartans begin to hear a pelican coming. All the ODST's helmets begin to play the same radio message on all frequencies. The pilot is requesting a landing zone, but they all get pissed. Like they aren't doing their best to stay alive. Now the pilot wants them to clear an area? Yeah, why didn't they think of that, huh? A marker comes up on their heads-up display as well as Chief's and Linda's. The group begins to move as a unit, slowly to the waypoint. Private Winters runs forward, dual-wielding brute spikers, clearing a path while Chief is right behind him. As the pelican begins to lower to their location, Rookie runs up to it and is the first to hop in and immediately jumps on the turret. This buys the rest of the crew some precious seconds, just enough time for all of them to get on board. But Chief, always trying to be the hero, is still a few meters away, fighting a combat form carrying a rocket. Linda, seeing this, hops back out of the pelican and runs to his aid. The combat form shoots a rocket straight at them. Linda's reflexes manage to kick in just fast enough to use the armor lock she found back at Crow's Nest. The rocket shot bounces off her and back at the combat form. The Chief and Linda use the smoke of the explosion as an escape and run to the pelican. Everyone is shooting out the back as the pelican takes off into the air. Several flood monkeys can be seen launching spikes into the pelican's engines as well as range forms. Though most of them miss, a few hit. This is not enough damage to bring it down, but it's flood biomass nonetheless. As the pelican makes it to the surface and heads into the atmosphere, a pure flying form begins to give chase. But with the remaining survivors firing upon the creature, it takes every last shot they have, but it goes down. The mission ends as the Pelican reaches the UNSC frigate, and they pull back in line with the other UNSCA and elite ships. Mission 5. Infinity. At this point, it has been just over a month since their escape from Earth. The Flood and the Human Elite Alliance are currently at a stalemate. While the Flood can't leave either through ships nor through portals such as the Ark, the humans are powerless to stop them, and the elites are willing to glass the planet, even against the wishes of Admiral Hood and Parangoski. Of course, humans don't want Earth glassed. They think they can beat the Flood eventually, which could be true, but as we know, the Great Mind will outsmart them. Every day, the Flood gets stronger from the ships it has left, and it's repairing them. All the defenses on Earth and all it's planning, but every day it also gets weaker as it needs to keep consuming biomass. Half of the biomass on Earth is plants, so the Great Mind has taken to using a lot of that mass to go through photosynthesis. Not a very effective way to keep the Flood alive, but it's the best it can do. Sooner or later, they all know the Flood will make a push to either destroy them or spread to other planets. For now, humanity has all hands on deck finishing up the Infinity. Let's clear up the timeline here for a bit. Originally, the front half of the Forward Unto Dawn makes it back to Earth in late December of 2552. In Mission 2, we established that 5 days later is when they were going to get picked up, so Mission 3 is basically the end of December. Now, with a month of recovery for Chief's group, but also the Flood and the UNSC, it's near the end of January. While humanity has been trying to hurry on finishing the Infinity, it's still years away from being done. The problem is that the insurrectionists try to hijack the Infinity. Even with the majority of the UNSC present on the solar system, that didn't stop them. Blue Team, or what's currently only Linda and Chief, are being sent to the Infinity to put an end to the insurrectionists. This mission ends up being the first, and correct me if I'm wrong, but over the last few months I've been replaying every Halo game, and it would be the first to have us fighting against other humans. Anyways, the mission takes place entirely on board the Infinity, and we fight through every section of the ship. We even get to fight mech suits as the insurrectionists are using repurposed construction gear to try and compete against the super soldiers that are Spartans. All comes to no avail as Chief and Linda lead a charge through every hull alongside the original 4 Spartan force that go through this event in the original timeline. There isn't much to say about this mission, as it's more of an easy and short mission to cut the tension from the last few long ones against the Flood. After rescuing the crew of the Infinity, the mission ends as Chief and Linda get new mission orders. The Admiral comes over the radio telling them, "Blue Team, you're being redeployed. Pack your bags. You're going to Onyx." Mission 6. Onyx.
A slipspace portal opens up and through it, 8 frigates emerge, 4 UNSC and 4 Sangheli. The camera pans over to a debris field orbiting a strange world, an artificial one from the looks of it. Upon reaching the planet's orbit, the ground team makes contact with the UNSC, and they are informed that the war is over. The Sangheli escort is an attempt to work together, and they aren't hostile. Blue Team finally reunites, as well as Halsey getting to see her Spartans.
They are introduced to the last Spartan-IIIs, Linda and Chief.
Hear about Kurt's death, which is like reopening a wound they thought had healed. It hurts to find out he is dead, but it's great to hear that we lived far longer and got to train a whole new class. Well, 2 in fact. After getting a chance to catch up only for a moment though, Blue Team is introduced to the Arbiter and Yipmore. After Chief and Linda explain the events of the last few months, Fred and Kelly welcome the aliens almost as family. Not so much as in a hug or anything like that, but for allies who have bled side by side with Chief and Linda and saved their lives, it's almost as if they are one of their own. Halsey interrupts them as she notices Linda carrying a light rifle and Chief a suppressor.
She says, May I?
As she reaches for Chief's suppressor, he hands it to her and tells her they found it on the Ark, along with the light rifle, Yip Moore's bolt shot, when he says that Yip hides the bolt shot behind him. He is not giving it up to anyone, and they mention they found it with a Forerunner suit. At this, Halsey's eyes widen, and she immediately starts asking where it is. They explain it had to stay behind with the monitor on the other ring. They also mention that they ran out of ammo a long time ago, but the engineers the UNSC has right now have been able to make more. At this point, they have Quick to Virgil, and a handful of other engineers captured all over Earth during their battle against the Covenant. Really, it's only like 4 engineers, but they are achieving more than 1,000 scientists. Introductions are cut short, though, as a message comes over the radio.
Master Chief, return to Galleon's chariot immediately.
As Blue Team is getting prepped to board a Pelican and head back to the ship, Banshees fly by, shooting plasma all over. These are different. Chief has never seen these before. As the next wave of Banshees approaches, Linda and Fred start shooting them. Linda brings one down with a single sniper shot, while Fred knocks out one of the Banshees' wings and it sputters into the ground. They look at the red paint on the Banshees and the Arbiter says,
"Vanished,"
with a disgusted look on his face. Yip Moore's eyes widen and he becomes enraged. He runs over to the Banshee and hops in it and takes off. Everyone is extremely confused by what just happened, but they continue by Chief saying,
"Fred with me, Linda, Kelly, secure all assets on ground."
The Arbiter gets in the Pelican and heads up with them. You can either play the ground battle on Onyx against brutes with red glowing banished swords, or you can be up in space playing as Chief and Fred on a longsword, or the Arbiter in a space Banshee. If you play the mission alone, you gotta play both sections, kinda like replaying the mission twice. While on the ground, Kelly and Linda don't get a chance to catch up. They work like a well-oiled machine. Lucy and Tom are defending Halsey and the engineers. While Halsey doesn't like the Spartan-IIIs, she has no intention of dying yet. The Banished are really trying to get their hands on the engineers, but Kelly is running circles around them. Literally, she's running around them, keeping the aggro on her, while Linda takes off hats with the sniper. Whenever a brute tries to close the gap, Linda puts a round either through their skull or their knees, leaving them exposed for Kelly to run up on them with a shotgun to the face. Lucy and Tom don't want to keep hiding, but their orders were to keep Halsey safe, and they have very little choice in the matter anyways. Since in this timeline Linda wasn't here to help them, the fight on Onyx went by quite differently. Mendez died, and the Spartan-IIIs went through a lot more fighting. Lucy and Tom are still hurt, even with the engineers trying to fix them up, so they are fine staying behind guarding the doctor. In the meantime, though, the engineers have literally repurposed parts of the walls and ground around them to create copies of Master Chief's suppressor. They don't so much give them to Tom and Lucy, but they leave it on the ground and the Spartan-IIIs pick them up. Linda takes this time to bring out her improved light rifle. Anyone who played Warzone in Halo 5 knows where I'm going with this. She has a dying star. Not only was it extremely lethal in her hands already, but these shots are cutting the Banished down to shreds. Although Linda and Kelly can handle the forces on the ground, there is reinforcement coming in the form of Banished Reavers and Blisterbacks, have to be taken care of. Linda and Kelly head to the Reaver Walkers. If they can take out the anti-air, the Chief and Fred can do a bombing run to take out the Blisterbacks. This is all happening at the same time as the space battle is happening after all. So we jump to that part of the battle. It is essentially the same as the fight on board the Saber in Halo Reach. Although now we get to find out what happened to Yip Moore. It seems he took the Banshee and rammed it straight into a Banished ship to board it. He is fighting inside one of the Banished battle cruisers, alone and ruthlessly. Chief and Fred focus on combating the Banished space forces, Banshees, Phantoms, and all sorts of Banished spacecraft. The first objective of the mission is to defend the UNSC and Sangheili frigates. After taking care of all the Banished fighters, the objective changes to assist Blue Team. So that's when the bombing run on the Blisterbacks happens. The final objective is to rescue Yip Moore. Chief and Fred board the Covenant battlecruiser, but as they go through the ship, it's nothing but dead bodies. Blood on the walls and entrails splattered around. They make their way to the bridge where they find a jackal in chains. This is no regular jackal though. This boy is husky. He is short for a Kigyar, but it is clear why he is in chains. He looks like a 5'2" bodybuilder. He has rippling muscles and clearly weighs about 400 pounds. In the center of the room, Yip Moore is on top of a brute, wailing on him with his bare hands. The brute is nothing but bone at this point. All the flesh has been stripped off its face from the flurry of blows from the Ungoy. Chief fires a shot to get the grunt's attention, finally stopping his barrage.
Cortana comes over the radio and says,
This ship is gonna blow like a piñata. Now would be a very good time to leave.
Chief looks over at the jackal and the Ungoy. From everything he's ever known, they don't get along, but Yip Moore has a tendency to ignore the species barrier, so he doesn't question it. All of them begin to run and get on a Phantom, as they won't be able to get back on the longswords in time. Upon their escape, the grunt explains, "This is Pirate King Rethilar." The Arbiter is in shock when he hears the name over the comms. His Banshee is escorting the Phantom back to the surface. They only land to pick up the rest of Blue Team, Halsey, Tom, Lucy, and the engineers. Halsey tells them she has a new mission in mind for her Spartans, but she will explain when they regroup with FleetCom.
Mission 7, Maiden Voyage.
March 2025. The Infinity is traveling through slip space to a shield world. Some scientists discovered a galactic map that designated the location of several shield worlds, and this one had similar energy readings to the weapons brought back from the Ark by Master Chief and Linda. Their plan is to get to this shield world, which they suspect will have weapons to combat the Flood, which they can use to take Earth back. If they can't take Earth back, at least secure a landing zone to get to the portal on Voy. With the portal, they'll take control of the Ark and force a halo ring to the solar system, and basically try to do what happens in Timeline 1. While on the Ark, they will go collect the knowledge of the Order that Linda mentioned to Halsey, but wiping out the Flood from Earth is their top priority. At least that's the plan. But they are banking on finding weapons on the Shield World designation 0001. Once they heard that this was Shield World 0001, they were more confident in the possibility of this being filled with weapons or technology to combat the Flood. As the Infinity exits slip space, it finds itself being scanned by the Shield World. It immediately begins to open up, for the Reclaimers have arrived. But they notice something is wrong. The ship is getting sucked in by a gravity well. They are powerless to stop it. Captain Del Rio orders 2 teams to be deployed to the surface to stop this gravity well. One team will go directly to the gravity well, and the other will look for a cartographer. Based on the info they have on the rings and the Ark, they have a small idea of where the cartographer will be. With him will go the Arbiter with his 2 escorts, Jar Quolam and Kaio Sazam. As for UNSC Force's accompanying chief, it will be Spartan Fred, and newly augmented Spartans Palmer and BLT Linda will lead a team to the gravity well, comprised of Yip Moore and his new friend, Pirate King Reth, Lar, Kelly, and ODST's Emily Glenn and Sean Thompson. They will land with a mammoth and roll on through it to the gravity well. Once again, the mission takes place from both points of view. You can choose to play as Chief and his crew, or Linda and hers, and this does support full 4-player co-op. So don't worry, you can choose to be any of the above. First part takes place when Linda and Kelly lead the mammoth. Although they would prefer to have some sort of recon, they never think to argue with the captain. Kelly, being cocky, suggests that she can run up ahead and they can catch up to her. But Linda tells her not to underestimate anything in these Forerunner planets. They have had to fight too much Flood in their lifetimes to expect anything less than total mayhem. This goes by a lot more smoothly than the original timeline of Halo 4, since there is no Covenant here, but that's the only part that is better. As they take out the first particle cannon protecting the gravity well, Promethean Knights begin to appear all over. They try to prevent them from destroying the rest of the particle cannons. The mission quickly goes downhill as the Promethean Knights are very strong. There are a lot more casualties than expected down on the ground. On the other side of the mission, Chief is making his way to what they believe to be the cartographer, but because of Linda's team's actions, the Prometheans begin to attack their Pelican. The Pelican goes down, and with it Chief, Fred, the Spartan-IVs, and the Elites. The Spartan-IVs, all having been ODSTs, are not shaken by the rough landing, but the Arbiter's team is slightly. The first one to get up is the female elite, and she is both massive in height and in anger. She prepares both her hands with swords as she immediately changes at some knights. The other elite takes his time to help the Arbiter from out of the crashed Pelican. Chief tells the team to engage as they all begin to spread out to fight the crawlers, knights, and watchers. The team works hard to put down the local Promethean forces. Fred and Chief find themselves fighting side by side when Fred tells John,
Have you ever seen a female elite fight so hard?
I don't think I've ever seen a female elite.
The Spartan-IVs are still getting used to their new augmented bodies and armors, but they are managing to clear out their fair share of enemies. The entire group regroups once the Knights activate sentry turrets. The Promethean weapons are atomizing cover all around them, so they have to act fast, while the Arbiter and his elites go after one sentry, and Chief plus Fred after the other. Kaio Sazam wants to go in close to cut it to pieces, but the Arbiter tells her that would be foolish. Instead, once they get close enough for Jar, he will destroy it with a spike grenade. Now you might be wondering, why a spike and not a plasma? Jar once bet a brute that he could beat him with his own weapons, and in a short-lived contest, the elite proved he has quite the mastery over physics. By doing the impossible, he made a spike grenade bounce not once, not twice, but 3 times in order to land a bullseye on the designated target. Ever since then, he carries spikes everywhere he goes. He has even taken into making some himself since the split of the Covenant. He no longer has access to many of the brute's weapons. Once Jar lands his spike on the sentry, it's history. On the other side of the battlefield, Chief and Fred have taken the simple but effective approach of filling it with lead until it no longer moves. Once the fight is over, their forces move inside to check on the cartographer. Cortana notices this is not the cartographer, but only a localized one. She is kicked out of the system and has Chief and Fred use their armor's shielding to EMP these data fields. In the meantime, Sentinel reinforcements arrive to slow them down, as well as a knight and a few crawlers. The rest of the team takes them on, while the female elite is insistent on doing hand-to-hand combat with the knight. Although the knight knights stand at about 10 feet in height. That means nothing to Kaio Sazam. She is a whopping 9 feet and 2 inches tall. The little height difference between them does not discourage her. It only excites her. She cuts the knight's arm blade with one of her own and rips it out of its sheath.
I will take my prize!
She yells as she uses it to stab the knight in the head. The knight evaporates, but the blade, having been separated from the main body, stays. She puts both her energy swords away as she now wields the Promethean blade. Palmer gives BLT a little nudge and whispers,
"And I thought Chief was tall."
Once they get the localized cartographer back online, Cortana gets readings that the actual cartographer is at the center of the planet. Chief once again says that can't be right, and again, Cortana tells him that they made it through one layer.
I got it.
That can't be right. Scan again.
We've already passed through one layer of the planet's surface. It's not crazy to think that someone else made it deeper inside than we did.
And Onyx had multiple layers, though she thinks she could be wrong since she isn't quite what she used to be. They start trying to radio the Infinity, but comms are not working. Ever since they got off the Infinity, the comms had begun to fail. Anything but very close range communications was scrambled. Without transport, walking back to the Infinity will take a long time. But Cortana says she can lead them to the world's transit system. Chief asks if that would be faster. Cortana seems to think so they decide to do that instead of walking all the way back through hostile territory. They take a minute to gather Promethean weapons. They better start getting used to using them. We head back to Linda's team as they are done pushing on the second particle cannon. They did not bring Roland though, and without an AI they are forced to take down the other 2 particle cannons, but after taking down the first 2, the Sangheili drop down some reinforcements. They bring them ghosts. The ODSTs assume the Grunt and Jackal will ride these, but they find more of a surprise when Yipmore hops on the wheel and the Jackal on the turret for the hog they were preparing. So the ODSTs take the ghosts alongside Kelly, while Linda hops on the side passenger of the Warthog. A moving target while she is moving at the same time, that's not difficult. That's just fun for Linda. Unfortunately, this time, without an AI, they don't try to go to the facility where Chief originally disabled the particle cannons. Instead, they just go fight the Prometheans on the other 2 particle cannons. There's nothing noteworthy here, but they do manage to bring down the gravity well. As a frigate comes to pick up the Mammoth, they return back on board the Infinity. They are surprised to see that Chief and his group haven't made it back, so the plan is to go get them out of trouble, but they aren't there anymore, according to Roland. Roland tells them the power signatures from the Chief and Fred's armor completely disappeared and reappeared inside the planet.
Mission 8. Cryptum.
This mission is essentially the same as the Halo 4 mission Forerunner, with the added difference that Chief is not alone here. He is traveling with a mighty squad of veteran warriors. The ODSTs are the ones with least experience, but they are still able to hold their own. Throughout the mission, we get messages from Linda. As she is getting closer, communications are starting to clear up, especially since Chief and his group are taking down the signal jammers. They had decided to split up. Chief and the elites will go to one, while Fred gets to know the Arbiter alongside the 2 Spartan-IVs. Moreover, throughout the mission, Chief is quiet, but the elites keep trying to challenge him to combat since they want to prove themselves and their honor. Fred and the Arbiter try to talk, since they aren't quite as silent as Chief. Fred and the Arbiter seem to work great together, even more so than Chief and Arby, because Fred actually communicates and doesn't try to shoulder every burden on himself. This is something both the Arbiter and the Spartan-IVs notice. Fred agrees that Chief always wants to carry the burdens, so others have an easier time. After Chief and Fred's teams disabled the communications pylons blocking out signals, Linda finally comes through on the radio. They will all meet at the Cryptum, which they all still believe is a satellite. Only this time, they are more under the belief that the Cryptum itself must be a weapon, since it's so heavily guarded and at the center of the planet. The second half of the mission picks up as they all regroup here. Blue team back at full strength, the Arbiter with his elites, and while on board the Infinity, Linda's squad of ODSTs began preparations for augmentations and fittings for Spartan armor, so they stayed behind. This is a huge group here to get through the knights defending the Cryptum. We know the Librarian doesn't want the Didact awake, not yet at least, but there's nothing that can be done about it. This group of all-stars rips through every obstacle in their way. So when the Chief goes and activates the Cryptum, there's very little to no difference.
The Didact is woken and released. This is the final cutscene as the Didact's armor shapes around him. He looks around at his dead knights, the humans wielding Promethean weapons. The combination of Grunt, Elite, Jackal, and Human. He sweeps his hand across the battlefield. Broken pieces of knights begin to turn orange. New knights arrive and teleport all over the place. The Didact does not attack this time. Seeing a combination of the races of the Milky Way, all albeit not all the races, seems to be the deciding factor here. The Didact does not fight. He dons his armor and extends a hand out. As Chief is the leader, he reaches out to grab the Forerunner's hand, and the cutscene ends. The legendary ending this time around comes by way of the Infinity. Once the pylons were taken down and communications were set up, the Infinity began to pick up a rescue beacon. This takes place almost immediately after Linda's group leaves to meet with the Chief at the Cryptum. Roland says, "The signal is from UNSC vessel. Designation, forward onto Dawn." Halsey on board the Infinity says, "What?" And just then, a bunch of Promethean knights begin to teleport on board the Infinity. They are glowing orange. The camera zooms into one as it opens its armor to show its exoskeleton, and it keeps on zooming in directly into its mouth as it fades to black. Well, that's it for part 2 of Timeline 2. I know this was a long one, and the last mission was only a few minutes long, but I want to know what y'all think. What did you like? What did you dislike? Sorry again for the mic. I'm still having to struggle between 3 different mics. Tell me what sounded better. Writing this took a long time, recording it took a long time, but editing, Jesus, that took in itself days. So if you really liked it, I would appreciate a subscribe, a like, a comment, you know, you got options there. The final part will take some time to make as of me recording this. I am working alongside Cody from the Tartarus What If video, and with the coda for the last What If video, What If Humanity Found a Halo Before the Covenant. We shot back and forth some emails. I'm not done writing the script as of recording this, but I can already feel like it's a lot of fun. I hope you share this with your Halo loving buddies. The goal right now is to pass 1,000 subs, and I'm just barely halfway there as is. Thank you all for watching. Have a great day. Bye.